Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivy Organics 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint, where we grow cool plants. And today we're going to be talking all about air layering. Air layering is a method that's been used by farmers and orchard growers around the world for centuries. And air layering is a method of actually propagating plants and creating genetically identical clones of exactly that same plant. And today we're going to be showing how to do that. This method actually works for pretty much every tree and every plant with some exceptions. For example, you can see here behind me, I've been working on my Eureka lemon tree, and I've actually got my first fruit. If you want to come and take a look over here, we've actually got our first fruit that we're going to be harvesting in the next couple of weeks. As you can see, it's just getting ready to ripen. And this Eureka lemon tree, just a year ago, bore about 10 lemons, and then this year it's got at least 50 lemons on this tree, and we're expecting at this rate to have over 200 lemons by next year. What I want to share with you is this here is my air layer, and I'm going to show you exactly on how to do it, but this is going to allow me to propagate and create a genetically identical Eureka lemon tree from its origin, which was actually originated here in Los Angeles, California, back in 1858. So this Eureka lemon tree, which I planted only 2 years ago here in my garden and grafted on a semi-dwarf rootstock, is these leaves, and this plant that's actually above the rootstock is actually from 1858, making this plant 158 years old. So once we remove this plant from the parent plant, which is the bottom part, we'll have a brand new tree, but the wood is 158 years old. Within the first year, and for sure by the second year, once the roots get established, it can now support fruit, unlike growing a seedling. A seedling will have to take anywhere, growing a lemon seedling or any other citrus from seed can take anywhere from 5 to upwards of 10 years for it to actually bear fruit. This is a very fast way to actually create genetically identical fruit, so you know you're getting the superior quality, yield, and flavor that you're looking for. And that's why we've actually done this for our Eureka lemon tree. Let me give you some other examples of trees that can actually be propagated similarly. You can air layer a hibiscus. You can air layer an Oro Blanco grapefruit. You can air layer a Fuerte avocado tree. You can air layer an apple tree. You can even air layer vines such as passion fruit, as well as grapes can be air layered. But you cannot air layer a banana. It just won't work. You also can't air layer strawberries. Why would you? They propagate by runners. You can create genetically identical plants by these runners that are actually running off this potted strawberry. Let's get started. So the materials you need to get started for air layering are as follows. We're going to need some scissors. I've also got some pruners. We're going to need some twine, some string. I've also got some sphagnum moss, which is right here. And then I've also got some rooting powder. I've got this plastic empty bottle. I also brought a razor blade. And I got some tin foil. And I'm going to show why, and if you don't have these materials, how you can easily substitute them for other stuff. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get started, and I'm going to show you how we're actually going to accomplish this method using a fig tree. So this here is a green variety of fig. The name of it, I believe, is so this here is a fig tree. I believe it's of the Cadota variety. And what I've got labeled here is a piece of paper that says auxin, which is the plant hormones that are generated typically by the leaves and the tips of the plant. So the auxins are created by the shoots, and then at the bottom here I wrote cytokinins, which are the root hormones. This actually flows from the roots and then travels up the plant. The auxins, again, start from the top of the plant and work their way down. There's both auxins and cytokinins throughout the entire plant, but the concentrations are different depending on where you are. More auxins near the top, more cytokinins naturally near the bottom, and depending on how that balance and depending on how you prune it will actually affect the fluctuation of hormones and ultimately the plant growth. I'm sharing this with you because this is kind of the science behind what's happening, and that's actually going to create the root formation that we're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to take this off here as it's in the way. What I want to share with you also, if you come in a little closer, you can take a look here that at every node, so this was the node, and at every node there was a fig, and here another leaf, and the node, and there was another fig right here, and here's another node. And what I like about this fig tree is I can also share with you that there's these breathing holes around each of the nodes. If you can take a look at those little dots that basically go around those nodes. Those dots are actually called lenticles, and they're actually breathing holes that allow the bark to actually breathe. It actually brings air from the outside into the cambium tissues and exchanges gases from the cambium tissues back out. So these lenticles will actually be places that are more likely than not to also result in root formation. So keep that in mind as we actually go through preparing our air layering to this Cadota fig variety. So the first step in preparing this is we're going to have to remove some of the bark. We're actually trying to interfere with the flow of the hormones through the plant. And to accomplish this, we're going to remove the bark below one of the nodes. So we have identified this node, and this will be actually a little bit too close to this leaf. So I'm actually going to go down a little bit further. We'll identify this node over here. And all of these white dots that actually are growing around the plant, you can actually see right here at the nodes. One white dot, another white dot, another white dot will ultimately form into the roots. And what I'm going to do here with my razor is I'm going to cut right underneath it, about 1/4 inch. And I'm basically going to cut all the way through and around. And you can see here comes the sap. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually cutting around the bark down to the cambium layers. I'm not cutting through the wood. And the sap is carrying waters and sugars, and it's also transporting those hormones, the cytokinins from the bottom and the auxins from the top. And by interfering with this fluctuation, we're going to cause it to root. I'll explain how in just a minute. So we've just cut here. We're going to do our second cut. It could be right above the next node. And we'll just wrap it around like so. And then we just gotta create an opening for us to get into. And then we're gonna open the bark like so. And it peels just like it's clothing coming off. It actually is quite loose. Here it is. You can see all that green is the cambium and the living tissues of the plant. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to scar and make sure that all of those vessels that are transporting the waters and the sugars and those hormones up and down the plant are damaged. And that'll be it. What's going to happen at the top now are the auxins are going to come flowing down, and there's no cytokinins to dilute it on this top part of the plant. And what the auxins do is increase root development. So it's going to encourage these nodes to now develop into roots. What we're going to now do is put some rooting hormone around this zone. So we're taking our rooting hormone, our rooting powder, and we're just going to brush some of that on it and put it around the node. I wouldn't recommend doing this with your finger. You should have gloves on or maybe use a brush instead. But I'm just going to do that. I'm going to wash my hands right after this step. And as you can see here, we just put this rooting hormone on it. So the next step is we got to create now some soil, or give it some soil medium to basically offer the plant for it to develop its roots. And what we're going to use to accomplish this is the sphagnum moss. And we're just going to put that in some water to absorb. And it allows us to actually form it around the plant a lot easier. And while this is happening, I'm going to prepare the container that's going to support the soil. And what we're going to do is just basically take our water bottle. I just took off the lid here, and I'm going to share with you over here what we're going to do next. We're just going to take the bottle over here, and I'm going with my pruners. We're just going to cut it like so, all the way up. And that's the reason I got my 2 pruners. I use my heavier pruners to cut the thicker lid, and now I'm using just my regular scissors, my paper scissors, to cut up near the top. And right at this button over here, I'm just going to open that up into a little circle as well. And that'll hold right around the tree. So you can see what I've now created. Here's my water bottle. We've split the end that you drink from apart. We've tore all the way up the side, and then we've created a little opening for the branch to actually come through. What we're going to do now here is just wrap this around the plant like so. And then we'll take some of our twine to secure it in place. Again, this tie is only going to be here temporarily. I never, ever encourage knots to be formed against the tree, but this is only going to rest here. It typically takes anywhere from as little as 2 weeks to as much as 8 weeks, maybe up to 10, for this process to work. And again, I just want to reiterate, this process can be used on pretty much everything. I've got a ficus tree here to my right. That's my neighbor's. It can work on your ficus tree. It could work on an elm tree. It could work on your, pretty much you name it. Oak trees. Just on and on and on. If you see magnolia trees, if there's anything that you see that you like, you can actually create the genetic identical clone of it through this method. What we're going to do next is now take our moss. It's now absorbed the water. We're going to take some of this, and we're going to squeeze it. Some people say to squeeze it really hard to make sure you get all the water, but you can see that I've created, it's got so many openings, it's naturally going to dry out. And so now we're going to put the moss inside the container. You can squeeze it just a medium amount. You can allow some water to stay within it. And we're just going to fill the container like so. And you're just going to want to make sure you get the moss all around it. You don't want to pack it too tight and nor too loose. You're going to be the judge of this part. But you just want to make sure that it's in contact with that particular node. That's going to be the key. We're going to cover the wound that we created, and about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch above the node. The nodes are going to form the roots and basically fill in this media of soil. And you can see using the sphagnum moss, it's quite easy to work with. It could work with any other type of soil, so in regards to improvising, if you had to use something else, it could work, but the moss actually is just really easy to work with. And that's it. I'm going to spin this around so you can actually see what I've done. You can see the tear over here. The moss is kind of bulging out of the plant. What we're going to now do is just take our string, and we're just going to secure it in place so it doesn't move. If it moves while the plant is trying to root, it's going to damage the roots. So we got to make sure that it stays where we want it to be. Tighten that up. And then what we're going to do next is take a little bit of tin foil. And what I'm using the foil first is to basically help the bottom of the container contain the liquid. So we're just wrapping it near the base. And we're just pressing that down. Again, we haven't created an airtight seal, and you'll see why in a minute. And then we're going to take some more foil, and what we're going to do with the rest of this is basically trick the plant into thinking that this area is underground. You want to make it dark. You don't have to use foil, you can use paper, you can use any other thing, but the logic behind it is you're trying to create a dark environment, which is what the roots are used to growing into. And that's the reason we created this shield. And now the last step is I'm taking my little watering can here and I'm going to add this product over here, which is Super Thrive. And what it is it's basically like a vitamin B1 solution. It helps with any transplant shock. It's also got a little bit of nitrogen in it, and that'll actually encourage some growth. And we're just going to put a couple of drops of that in here. And water the top. So we got all of those vitamins, all of this good water going right into the plant, and you can see that the water is passing right through and dripping down the plant. There's no water being trapped in this area, and nor should there ever. If it's actually an airtight seal, and I've seen people using saran wrap and I've seen people using other more airtight methods, and the risk of that is you're causing mold and mildew and disease and rot to actually occur around the plant. By actually allowing the airs to pass through, it actually will encourage a more healthier root development within this area. So you can see that the water is still just dripping down and coming out of the plant. So we're going to add water to this plant, and most people do it so airtight that they never add water and they just come and revisit it, you know, a few weeks or a month later and the roots are there. But the healthier way to do it is to actually allow it to breathe and just water it. Hopefully if you got the time to visit your plants twice a week, add some water and open the results about 4 to 6 weeks from now, and you'll be surprised. Let me show you what I've accomplished over here. So here we are now again, my Eureka lemon tree. We're just going to, let me put my scissors away. So we're just going to unwrap the foil here. First take a look, and you're going to see more as I continue to unwrap it, but take a look at all the roots over here on this side. Take a look at all of that. So this was formed about 6 weeks ago, and you can see how much root development we've accomplished in that short period of time. Here's the lower foil that was helping to keep the waters in place. We're going to unwrap this at our table behind me. What we're going to do here is we're just going to sever the plant that we've created from the parent, which is the lower part. And what we're going to do is we're just going to follow this leaf. You can see that it's already starting to bud, as we discussed earlier. There's more cytokinin hormones at the lower part. It's encouraging now the next branching to come out. We're just going to cut about a 1/4 inch above it and at an angle. And you can see this here is now the pruned end. So over here is where we just pruned our air layering plant that we've created. And we're now going to seal this end with an organic, Ivy Organic 3-in-1 tree guard. Just add water, a natural tree trunk and branch barrier, protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents, for use on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs. And it's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. We're using color white, but it's also available in brown and green. And I'm just going to mix it to make sure that all the oils and the paint are in contact with one another. And I'm just going to take my brush and just seal the end, as this wound will take anywhere from a year to a couple of years to close. And by sealing it, I've now protected against pathogens, bacteria, viruses, and then the more obvious, termites, wood-boring beetles, and so much more. And we've used it down below. This was applied when we installed the plant about 2 years ago, and you can see that it's starting to fade off the plant, but it's still offering the light protection. But once upon a time, there was a lot more sun before it created its canopy to shade the lower trunk from the damaging sunburn. A citrus is particularly susceptible to damage from sun. So here we are now. We're going to open our surprise. We're going to take off this tie and take off the lower foil. And then here it is. I'm just going to open it up here. And you can see how easily we've just created a new plant. We're going to try not to disturb the soil medium around it. And now what we can do is just bring our pruning to a little closer to where the roots are. And now we've created a new plant with plenty of roots. And what we're going to do now is plant it. And I'm going to give you a few quick planting tips. What I'm most excited about with this plant is it's now a genetically identical cutting to that plant that grew from a seedling here in Los Angeles in 1858, as we explained earlier. The Eureka lemon tree is of an Italian heritage. So it was actually came from some seeds that were apparently brought from Italy, grown here successfully in Los Angeles, and became such a popular lemon in regards to just being a heavy bearing, delicious, quality lemon. And it's actually made its way into many grocery stores across the world. And again, another thing that's of particular interest is it's now growing on its own rootstock. So this lemon is actually growing on its own rootstock, which means this lemon will grow to a standard size, being anywhere from 20 to 30 plus feet. We can naturally prune it to control its size, but otherwise this plant will grow to a very large lemon tree size as it's not grafted. So its root is not going to be restricted to allow the plant to reach its maximum height, unlike the lemon tree that's behind me, which is grafted on a semi-dwarf rootstock, which will keep its root between 8 to as much as 15 feet. Again, this one will grow from at least 20 to upwards of 30 feet, and I'm going to try to find it a nice home. And the other great thing I love about this is it's a multi-branched lemon, so we're going to grow it as a bush, and it's just going to be a giant bush, and each branch is going to support a lot of lemons. And all we got to make sure is that the branches don't cross one another, but we'll do a pruning lesson on that later. Let's actually pot this real quick. So I'm just going to set this plant here in the shade so the roots are not exposed to the sun. And what we're going to do here is we're going to start off with a pot like so. You got to make sure it's got a hole at the bottom so that the water can pass through. And again, you want to make sure that the plant gets air. It's got to breathe, even at the root level. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put some rocks. I've also got some broken clay pot materials that I found around the property. And I've also got next to me wood chips, and I just want to make this point that you do not want to put wood chips at the bottom, as it will rob the soil that we're going to put in here of the nutrients, and it could potentially rot and actually kill the plant. So you want to use something that's actually going to help with drainage, and rocks is a great option. So we're just going to put that at the bottom of the pot like so. We can even put some of these clay materials in there as well. And what this is going to do is, once we water, it's going to force the water to come out and get out of the pot, so that, again, the roots are not surrounded by water and drowning. So this is going to help with the flow of water. What we're going to do next is I've got a perlite and vermiculite and peat moss mixture, and it's basically 1/3 part of each. So what we're going to do is, and I've got over here a bag of perlite, which is just more of the whiteness, and this actually helps with increasing drainage as well. And what we're going to do is I'm going to add a little more perlite for what's going to be the bottom mixture of this pot. And the reason is, again, to further encourage water to pass through the soil quickly. And then now we've got equal parts of the vermiculite, perlite, and moss that'll be going into the rest of this. And now we're going to put in position our lemon. And that will go in here like so. We'll cover the rest up. Position that in place. And then I'm also going to take, again, another handful or two of perlite, because I want, again, increased drainage, and that'll actually form not just the bottom 2 inches, but also the top 2 inches of this plant. And we're just going to put that around. And we want to make sure that we don't cover the root ball by more than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm trying to find the lowest. Here's the moss right there at this point. We want to make sure we don't cover it. So I'm going to probably have to stake it as well to hold it in place as these roots get developed. That's going to be done. With the wood chips that I brought, we can actually put that around the plant, but keep it away from the stem so it doesn't cause any stem rot. As the wood decays, you don't want it to be decaying the plant's trunk. So just put these wood chips around it, and again, pull the wood chips away from the plant's trunk. And the wood chips, again, will offer more minerals as well as help retain the water. I'm going to put the saucer back in place, and now we just got to water it. So I've got here my watering can, and we're going to add to it this fish fertilizer. Fish fertilizer is very high in nitrogen. It's 5% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, which we don't need fruit development right now, and it's also got 1% potassium, which also helps towards strengthening the roots. But again, we do want something that has a lot of minerals, and fish fertilizer has a lot more than just these. These are the macronutrients, and it also has micronutrients. We're going to mix that up, add it to some water. So we just put about a couple of tablespoons in there, and then I'm just going to put a few drops again of this Super Thrive, which is another, again, a vitamin B1 with a little of nitrogen in there. And what that's going to do is help with the transplant shock, as obviously we just did a lot to this plant. It's also going to help encourage root development as well. We're just going to water the plant like so. One other thing I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to try to sneak this guy in on the side. I've got this strawberry plant, and the strawberry plant is part of one of the plants we selected in what we call the Wimpy plant test, and I'll put the link to that down below. I'm going to put this in place and I'll show you what we did in a prior video. We're just going to take this strawberry plant like so. Got the roots. We're just going to squeeze that in here to the side and insert that, roots and all. And there's our little strawberry plant. And the reason for the Wimpy plant test is actually going to help us determine when is the next time to water it. As long as the plant isn't wilted, then we know not to water the plant. If the strawberry plant begins to wilt, then we know it's time to water the plant. And the other reason for using the strawberry plant is it's got a pretty weak root system. The roots usually only grow a few inches compared to other herbs and vegetables and flowers that actually might have a stronger root system. And we've also determined that it's pretty sensitive to restricted water. When it's not watered, it actually stresses and begins to wilt, whereas other plants, especially succulents, don't indicate any stress at all. Let me show you the plant we did behind over here. So this here was a Meyer lemon that we potted a few weeks ago. We again used the strawberry plant for our Wimpy plant test, and you can see now down below we've got some beautiful strawberries to now enjoy. In addition to, we've got a super healthy Meyer lemon tree. Take a look at the lemons. We've got it fruiting over here. We've got the lemons, and if you come up a little higher, you can actually see some more lemons, and we've also got now some blossoms that are coming out as well. So, and we've also got a new flush of growth that's going to be starting probably in the upcoming weeks. I can see the small leaves that are just starting to come out of it as well. So the last thing we're going to do now is create a foliar spray. We're going to use the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint, and I'm going to mix that again to make sure we get the oils as well as the paint together. We're just going to add about a teaspoon or two to our spray bottle, and then shake it and spray it. And what this is going to offer is a sunblock to the plant, as well as it's got the oils to repel any insects from harming the plant while its root system gets established. And if you zoom in a little closer, you can actually see the foliar organic white spray that we use to basically keep the plant cool as the plant gets established in its new home. We'll position it now in a place which will get light for half the day, and it'll be in the shade for the rest of the day. And that pretty much concludes it. The air layering method for propagating pretty much every single type of tree that you desire. I hope you found this video informative, and if so, be sure to like it, and most importantly, subscribe down below so you'll be connected to all the other educational Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint videos. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.